This is about the Gayatri Reddy and Serena Nanda um, article, Hijras and Alternative Sex Gender in India. Usually Hijras, Hijras, are considered a third sex associated with fertility, though they themselves are infertile and impotent. A third sex or a third gender. It's a large group, and they're very adaptable, and they still survive. It's got quite a long history. So androgyny, being somehow between men, andro, and women, like gynecology, or intersex, or third nature, date back to at least the Kama Sutra, 200 to 400 AD. Hinduism has a theme of androgyny, and many of the gods and goddesses actually have two sexes. So if you look at some of the pictures of Hindu gods, you'll see one half is female, one half is male. And they also have gods who appear in both male and female incarnations, or who change sex. So Hinduism is a little more flexible about gender than perhaps our culture is used to. When Muslims took over part of India, in the court, they had eunuchs. A eunuch is a man who's been castrated, and eunuchs were a big source of labor, including labor that would be in places where large households of women were kind of kept under surveillance. That's a whole other story. There was a big trade in eunuchs in Europe also, out of Venice. Anyway, so India has this tradition of ambiguity about sex going back 2,000 years. Let's see. Well, not quite 2,000 years. 1,600 years. And then it has the tradition of the eunuch that Muslims brought into India. So they're kind of ready for the idea that there could be a third sex or a third gender or more. British colonialism came into a country that had many local tribes and castes throughout the country. There was not one system, but when British colonialism began to rule all of India, they regularized and institutionalized the caste system over the whole region, and they found Hijras who were living in groups with their own social organization, and they classified them as one of the criminal castes. So there were laws written into the Indian legal code forbidding sodomy and emasculation. What is emasculation? Emasculation is taking off the masculine parts. Also, all their property was confiscated under British colonialism. Hijras formed their own kinship groups, taking in abandoned and runaway boys. There may be some history of Hijras being the place where intersex people could find a home and find relatives. So intersex people are people who have some of the physical characteristics of males and some of the physical characteristics of females. That's what intersex means. And although it's not very common to have obvious physical ambiguity sexually, there are people that are born this way, and more than you think. So that could be part of the history of Hijras. men who could not have penetrative sex with women because they didn't have an appropriate equipment. They could find their place in the Hijras. Now the Hijras, and in more recent history, included men who sacrificed their sexual parts in an actual physical operation, and that supposedly made them more holy. So they were reborn as a Hijra from whatever they were before through this ritual where they have parts removed. So they're no longer male, they're no longer man, now they are, but they're not woman either. The article talks about a three-gender system where you could say there are men, there are women, and there are people who are not men and not women. So they're really not trans. They're their own thing. There's some symbolism of the phallus, the penis, as a fertility symbol. And as a symbol, it's just the phallus. It's not the man with the phallus, it's just the phallus per se. And so therefore, the removed phallus becomes somehow magical. And these guys, or these Hijras, they're not exactly guys, make some money dancing at weddings and at births. Why? Because they are associated with fertility, oddly enough. Though they themselves are unable to make a baby, this sacrifice that they made and the symbolism of the phallus that's been removed makes them associated with fertility. So it's good luck to have Hijras dance at your wedding, and this is one way they make a living. They also, some of them make a living through prostitution. Lately, they've been running for political office and winning. There's a little bit of a debate. Can Hijras run for seats that are reserved for women? They have some kind of a quota system in India to try to get more women into politics. They're also taking advantage of Hindu nationalism because their religious practices hark back to ancient Hindu rituals and Hindu symbolism. But religiously, they're very interesting because they're dual religion and they don't see a contradiction. They identify as Muslims, but they're blessed by human gods, and they wear a sari, which is a woman's Hindu clothing. However, they may not wear a bindi, a dot on the forehead, which a Hindu woman might wear. And at times they wear burqa or hijab, Muslim women's clothing, but they don't really go as Muslim women because, for example, if they go on the Hajj, if they go on the pilgrimage to Mecca, they don't need a male chaperone. So they're kind of getting the best of both. There's getting back to this idea of Hijras in national politics, obviously as a minority gender, they are a little bit at risk of discrimination and prejudice and perhaps violence. So getting a little bit of political power is a smart move on their part. Why are they popular? Well, people who make sacrifices, people who are religious, are often thought of as less dishonest and less corrupt than other people. These guys are impotent. They can't, have penetrative sex with anybody. or at least they can't do the penetrating, and they don't have any biological families, they don't have any sexual desire, supposedly. They've given up sexual desire. People think that they won't be corrupt because of that. They won't be trying to get money for their family and place all their relatives into political office and give them government contracts and everything. So people think they're less corrupt, partly because they're impotent. Also, people think that because there's some discrimination against them, and they're kind of odd in the general pattern of how most people are. So people think that they would be more sensitive to the outcasts and the downtrodden.